Yeah, I think that actually what's helped me have the longest stints of working out has actually been when I took the pressure off and I was just happy with anything on the spectrum from going there and just getting a workout in and going through the motions if that's what it took,
Mhm.
all the way through like going in and like busting my ass and having like a really good workout. And I've also found what works for me training wise to do less. Like I used to be that guy that like would sometimes go and be there for like an hour or two and do like
Yeah.
six different exercises, 3, 4 sets
Yeah.
each. And then you realize like no, if you like really focus on like that mind muscle connection, like a good stretch, like
Uh-huh.
explosive pull or explosive push, control the negative, like you can get a lot done in
Yeah.
less than 10 sets.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's how I was doing my, workout this morning. Like, I was on instead of doing dumbbells, I did the cable curl. Like, there's a cable machine with the handles, and I just put that down low and did curls with that.
Mhm.
And, it's nice because I like the cable for the negatives because you can feel it a little bit more, and it does feel like a more comprehensive workout, even though I'm doing less reps and I only did 1 bicep exercise instead of 3, whatever. I'm like, my biceps feel it, and it feels good. Um, and it's way more approachable on a persistent and consistent way of like, hey, what do I know it's important to me to work out today. I'm not gonna force myself to do this like crazy big thing, but like what can I get in that I feel is important? Okay, well, my shoulders hurt, and I know if I work the muscles around that, that's gonna like help with my goal of strengthening that to decrease the pain. So it's like pairing what's important to me with how it's going to be useful to me, and then just executing it in the most intuitive way rather than like these big expectations that I create, which
Yeah, because
most
like
of us are raised with working out in the way you were just saying.
yeah, and like whether it's running, working out, work, like if you view it as this huge uphill battle that's just going to be like such a strain and so draining on you, like you're always going to view it as like this huge drag. But if you can find a way to view it as like something that's just fun and good for you and not this huge strain, and it's like, yeah, like I'd rather have 30 minutes than nothing. And it's better than it's is it as good as a 2 hour crusher workout? No, maybe not, but like what's going to be more
In
consistent
what
for me?
and also in what way is it better, right? Like that's
Right.
the other question. But yeah, and I've found a lot of success recently where, some people I used to love pump up music for workouts or running or whatever, and now it's a really nice time where I get to just like use my body and let my mind kind of have free time in a way, if that makes sense. And so I just listen to whatever I enjoy. So last week I was listening to this Kill Tony episode, and I'm on the rower. I did just something simple, 5 minute intervals. I did 4 or 5 minute intervals with a 1 minute break in between. So I got 20 minutes of rowing in, took it easy on my body in doing that. And dude, I was just cracking up. It was the Kill Tony where Shane Gillis did Trump and then I forget
Yeah.
did Joe
Yeah.
Biden. And I was just cracking up on the rower. And I'm like, dude, this is so fun. Like
Yeah.
rowing, I'm not even thinking about it because my body's doing what it needs to do, but I'm just like enjoying it. And then like today I was listening to Matt Walsh podcast just because I'm like, you know what? I haven't listened to him in a long time. Let me see. Like sometimes I like listening to him. Not I wouldn't do it
Yeah.
today, but
Like after me and my dad saw that movie he made, and then he was on Joe Rogan, I listened to it, but like he's kind of dry, and
he I
like
like the
you
way he
know most of his views.
yeah, I like his dry sarcasm. Like that's what's funny to me sometimes. It's like enjoyable. It's like a way to take in politics. And he's like, "Oh well, I've completely changed my view on Kamala now that I know that she's Doritos. That makes me feel very connected with her. I hope
Yeah,
it does that for all of you as well. You know." And
yeah,
so like that's just it's like because it's the same. He gets frustrated about the same stuff I do, but his sarcasm allows me to be like, "All right, don't take it so seriously. Like, it is a stupid thing. Other people are seeing that's a stupid thing. Just take it as a silly thing,
yeah, for sure.
So I think that's why I like him.
Yeah, I
Eh,
definitely like
he couldn't do it
him.
every day though.
I've been watching this guy named Mike Israetel lately. He's a jacked, like bald bodybuilder type guy, but he has a degree and he's a doctor, like not doctor, but has a doctorate in some kind
Yeah.
of like sports science or whatever. But he's funny. and he's really insightful, and it feels like the content, even though it's the same stuff that I already know, it feels fresh because of
Mhm.
the way he slides in these jokes and stuff. But I find myself just like wanting something by him on as like my podcast. So it's been kind of nice, honestly, having like something different than like Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro all the
Yeah.
time. Big
Yeah, I
time.
think I'm in a search, and I find that, my natural inclination is to do, like, psychology or religion or, um, politics, because those are things I all enjoy, but they're also the things I am, like, tired. Like, they make me tired, so when I am just, like, wanting to chill, I'm trying to find other things to get into. I'm looking at maybe trying audiobooks, or it's just like an exploration, like, I'm trying random podcasts and whatever, but
Audiobooks are great, but then, it's such a rabbit hole because if you want to listen to like really good audiobooks, typically you got to pay. And even
Mhm.
if you have like Audible, you only get like 1 credit a month. But no, I hear you on that.
Yeah, but I don't
Definitely
know.
hear
I
you on
think I'm just trying to stay within like who I want to be and what's important to me in my life. But I think the season of my life I'm in right now is like just don't take everything so seriously. You know, like whether it's an injury, whether it's um the political season, or whatever it is, just
that. Yeah.
life is serious enough without us like attaching to that. Like just enjoy it sometimes, in
Yeah.
whatever capacity you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I've been in a really good place lately. Sounds like you are too. So
Hmm.
all the way around, that's good for the boys.
Good for the boys. Win for the boys. Um, yeah. My mom and Mike went to that Trump rally up in Butler.
The one that just happened last week.
Hmm.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They said it was like a very surreal thing. It was kind of cool hearing my mom speak about it because she's like, it was the first time I heard Trump speak in public, like in person
Yeah,
in
in
public.
person.
And she's like, I just had this moment where I turned to Michael and I was like, wait, he like really does like those really are his mannerisms. That really is the way he speaks. And it was less of this like, wow, that's silly, more of just this like surreal, like, wow, he really is just like how he is. Like it's a very
It's
authentic.
it's like talking to your super big personality uncle
Yeah,
that is like the life of the party and
yeah,
then putting him on the world stage and then having everyone critique it. It's like
yes.
that's just how he is. Like it's like if someone was like, like my uncle Mike, um, let's on a recorded call, like I'm not going to go into too much detail, but like let's just say he said something that like he wouldn't say as CEO YMCA Mike that everyone knows.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like at the pool party on Sunday and be like, oh my God, like he's such a terrible guy because he said that. It's like, it's just in the flow. Like there's nothing, like no one's reading into it, but you show that clip or someone overheard what he said to the world stage. And then everyone with a million different opinions is going to have something different to think or say about it. And before you know it, like the name and the clips getting tossed around. And then all of a sudden it's like this viral thing. I mean, obviously, like that's just what repeatedly happens with Trump and Kamala.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if the majority of people who receive, like, if you didn't have the political spin on it, right? If Trump says something that's out of, that seems outlandish, and if someone heard it without anyone already telling them what that means,
Mhm.
would they naturally give him the benefit of the doubt and be like, I think I get what he's trying to say here. It's not the best way to say it, in my opinion, but, or would they immediately, yeah, or would they immediately be like, I'm offended, like, how dare he type of thing,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
like
No,
to
I
think
agree.
most people, without a spin, would just take it and give the benefit of the doubt because that's just human. Like humans are not meant to be on a spotlight 24/7, the way our brains think.
No, and like not have everything they do and say critiqued. And then like I feel like that even just messes with your mental and like this could tie into like a whole nother conversation. But like when you talk about just like being your true authentic self,
Yeah.
if you feel like everything you say is going to get scrutinized and judged, it makes it so much harder to just act freely without overanalyzing everything you do or say.
Yeah. And I think that's really, I've actually had, and I absolutely will not go into detail on this just because it's my work. But
Yeah.
I had a client who kind of had something like that resonate recently, and I'm like seeing that where it's a discrepancy of, hey, I want to be accepted, but what if people judge me? It's like, well, really, whether it's conversations that you and I have had, or a conversation like that, or even this bigger picture on a world stage, I think there's really two good solutions to this, and maybe not exclusively so, but one good solution is, hey, we really work to change culture at large to be to give the benefit of forgiveness rather and the benefit of doubt rather than assuming the worst, right? Assume the best instead of assume the worst. That would be wonderful. Like if we lived in that society, it really would be wonderful. But there's so much of that outside of our control. And it's just like, dude, this has been so annoying. I find myself just getting that like weird, not burp, but like pressure of like when I speak. I don't even know where it's coming from. Like I'm not sure if it's because the elevation now, but it's happening all the time and it's so annoying. Anyhow, I digress.
Maybe you're just sucking in a lot of air when you speak.
Yeah, maybe I need to slow down when I speak. Um, but so that's one solution, which would be wonderful, but I really think it's so unfeasible for a lot of reasons. And the other solution is just individually taking ownership and being like, yeah, they might think that, but who cares? Like, I know who I am. I'm going to keep being who I am. Some people are going to take that the wrong way. Some people are going to take it in a better way. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let either of those change who I am. And I think that's where a lot of people, for instance, in today's political race, see the distinction between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, because Trump is unapologetically himself at all times. He's not, when people say, oh, well, this, he's not overly defending it. He's not saying, oh, no, 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 I meant this. He's just like, no, it is. Rosie O'Donnell's, just Rosie O'Donnell. You're right. You're like, he just kind of doubles down and makes light of it and is just himself. And Kamala is on the like side of politics where everything's scrutinized and you always have to play like mental chess to try to get ahead. And so she's not authentic at all. Right now, her main campaign is that she likes Doritos and she drank a Miller High Life on a late night show to relate to people. And it's like what? You're a chameleon. Like I don't even know who you are. I couldn't vote for you if I agreed with what you were saying because I don't believe that what you're saying is what you believe. And I
The
think that,
chameleon piece is good.
yeah, and I think that's like the biggest discrepancy is the authenticity, and really those are the two ways I see. I think those are really two examples that are in the light right now that exemplify what I'm saying. But I think those are the two things: is wait for society to change, which would be really hard and long and probably never happen, or just be like, you know what, I'm going to try to be who I want to be for myself, and if some people like that, great. If others don't and they're not in my life, okay, that's just part of that.
Yeah, it's like the whole not everyone has to like me philosophy and being okay with that. And also too, like realizing that like everyone is also dealing with their own shit and that the chances that someone, even if it's for a split moment, it's not a big deal if someone judges you or analyzes you or thinks this or that. Like I find myself still doing that to this day at the gym. How many years have I been off and on working out, and I'm like in between sets and I'm like, oh, like, why am I pacing around? Why am I like drinking water in between every single set? Like, do I really even need this water? Am I just doing it to look like I'm busy and I know what
Uh,
I'm doing? Like I'll just, yeah, like literally, like there's so many small things, like the path that I take to the water fountain. It's like, oh, well, like what if someone thinks that like I didn't want to see that guy and that's why I went this way? Like the internal monologue is just like ridiculous, and it's just it also is amplified. I feel like, and I've noticed this as I've gotten older and like worked from home now for what 4 years. Um, like having less social interaction and then being in a situation where it could be that I have 5, 10, 15, 20 plus people like potentially looking at me frequently, like not locking in on me, but like, hey, like I'm at the YMCA, you got like 6 people on the treadmill, 15 people working out, couple people walking around, coming and going. I have that many more people to think about in a way and like consider. Some might care about their opinion more than others. Like, you do that like quick analysis, like, oh, like old woman who I'll never see or care about, like I don't care what she thinks, but like young dude who like is more jacked than me, is he like do you even lift, bro? Like
Yeah, man. I think you point out a lot of things that most of us struggle with in a lot of ways. Um, and probably is worse. Ambulance.
I can't hear it.
Well, that's good.
Just
I
props to the Mac team for the
Yeah,
noise
yeah,
canceling.
indeed. Um, but in the recent years, where work from home has been more and social isolation was kind of forced upon us in COVID, uh, I think more people probably deal with that now than ever before. And exactly what you said, where we have less practice. And when you have less practice, less experience, then you have less experience to counter those worrisome thoughts, you know? Um, would you say that like that type of thinking like interferes with your life in any way? Like does it cause any distress when you're at the gym? Is it like, man, why am I constantly like, is it bothersome in some ways or no?
I'm cognizant of it. I would say to some degree it's a thing that I don't want to do, but it doesn't prevent me from getting my workout done to the
Yeah,
level or intensity that I wanted to get it done at. It's more or less just something I'm aware of. And I guess if I'm analyzing it, what I wish that I was just more focused on like my own workout and the things I have going on in my life, sure. But I always find myself like analyzing, like just out of the corner of my eye. It's not like I'm staring at people, like wondering what they're thinking. It's more or less just like the last time I was there doing back and by, and I was like doing my biceps. Just remember seeing like a big like black guy was on a bench and he was like shaking his head. And naturally I thought like, oh, he's like, is he shaking his head at me? And like because of like the way I'm doing the exercise or where I'm standing or something, like why am I so um selfish in a way, thinking that because he's shaking his head while he's literally looking at his phone or like looking up and then looking back down at his phone, that he would even be thinking about me.
yeah.
It's like that's yeah, that's it's 99% probably false that he was even remotely noticing I was even there.
Yeah, it is inherently, you said selfish, I'll use the term self-centered. It's
Yeah,
inherently
better.
self-centered way of thinking, um, which I think is different than selfish, right? It's not, I think selfish means more intent personally. That's how I use those words differently. But it is a very self-centered way of thinking. And I can't imagine that like brings extra joy to those moments for you.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah.
And it saying it out loud kind of makes it sound worse than it is. Like I said, it's not like something I leave the gym and I'm like, why would you do that? You idiot, idiot, idiot.
Um, no, of course. And I think that's a big part of it. Just noticing like, hey, you struggle, I struggle, like that's just part of it sometimes. And what's the point of beating yourself up about it?
Yeah, no, of course
That's
not.
actually really it's really cool. I'm trying not to like jump into therapist mode because obviously that's part of what I would do. But that's like where I'm probably maybe seem a little off right now because I'm like,
Bouncing back and forth. I was just talking
yeah,
about this last night with Hadley.
yeah,
Like, how do you, like you specifically, like, how do you balance switching flipping the switch on and off of being in therapist mode for your career, not tying it in too much with just like your everyday social interactions with friends, your wife,
yeah,
family?
man. That
It's
that is hard.
yeah, because I know that
Balancing.
that's always been an aspect of you even before you even started studying it. Was like, so it's not like that got any easier. If anything, it probably got harder because like you were always that friend that wasn't afraid to just be like, wait, you said this. Tell me more about that. Like, why do you feel that way? And
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's I the other part of it is I enjoy it. Like I do it for a career because I enjoy it. And so I don't mind having there's a car that pulled up with like half of it's missing. Half the car's missing is on the road.
the back half is just gone.
The front half. underneath, like the whole everything underneath the engine. It's okay. It's like a Chevy Tahoe or
The
something.
way that I pictured like a car pulling up and like someone just like a chainsaw right down the middle, like no back wheels, just
Yeah.
two front wheels and two front and passenger seats, and
Yeah.
it's just still balancing like it's a normal car, like in my head. Like it doesn't even make sense.
Oh, that's fun.
The laws of physics prevent.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, see, that's the side of it, is I think it's really fun to even get inside each other's heads like that. I think it's a really cool way to connect, especially with people that I care about. And so that's something that makes me want to dive into those questions more. I think that's a big reason of where that like interest comes from for me is personally it allows me to feel connected, and it's just intriguing for me to know how you think, just in like that
Yeah.
little example of the car. And so for the same reason, balancing work with this, where I try to really saw myself in the skill that I try to use is becoming aware, like just that internal awareness of like, hey, I'm struggling. And sometimes I'll even say that out loud to like help myself with it. It's good to let you know, but more so when I say that, it's for me to like, hey, let me state what I'm struggling with. And usually that decreases like its pull on me, you know? So I say it out loud, and then I try to go by this rule. Like the value that I hold true, the principle I hold fast to here is I don't offer help or insight in that way unless someone is seeking it, or unless I think that and I'll do this with you sometimes. We're like, hey, I kind of have a thought about that. Can I share it? Like I'll ask for permission. I'm not going to just start into it, because the most frustrating thing in the world for me being in this profession is trying to help someone pouring a lot into it, and then they're like, yeah, sure, but
They're
it
not in a
doesn't really
position or
matter.
ready to be
Yes,
helped.
yes. And so that toll that took on me, even in my marriage, is probably the thing where I'm like, okay, this is actually creating gaps in our relationships, and it's doing the exact opposite of something I want to do. What is that? No. Um, So I think that's how I do it. Is just reminding myself of, hey, what's important to me in these relationships? If it's coming closer, I don't think that me jumping in and doing therapy is going to like bring us closer. And now it's changing a dynamic that we've had for years into something that cannot be sustained in a more intimate way than we already have.
Yeah. I don't know why. This just made me think of a guy that comes to the sauna and lifts at the Y. He is super educated, very well spoken, doesn't use a lot of filler words, very in shape. So if he's typically talking about like nutrition and health, unasked, by the way, for the most part,
Okay.
it's kind of like, all right, like it looks like this guy knows what he's talking about. It's not like he's some like 300-pound blob that's in there trying to share fitness advice. Anyways, what he ends up doing, and I think I've mentioned this guy to you before, he ends up going on these rants where like you cannot get a word in. And I mean like cannot get a word in. I don't mean like he never stops talking, but I mean not only does he not stop talking, but if you try to chime in, he continues talking and like doesn't really let you say much and like he's butting in before you finish your statement, like that kind of dude. And
Yeah,
I
that's
always think to myself, like, man, like I love what he shares, and it's obviously coming from a place of passion and knowledge from his end. But if he could just see it from my perspective, because I always like find myself like analyzing, like if I walk in, he's already mid conversation, if you even want to call it that. It's more like a solo podcast. And he's just ranting about something to someone in there. I always think like, man, you're sharing so much information and you're obviously very educated on the topic. So you're almost like that professor that's so well versed in their subject that or they struggle to be a teacher, that I wish you could condense one or two topics and give something strong, like one or two things for someone to think about when they leave, instead of going on a 20-minute rant where I don't even know what to take away from it because you said so
yeah,
much. And like, sure, a good listener and good conversationalist will pick out like, man, out of everything you just said, this was the one or two things that stuck out to me. But for the average person, I don't think that that's how people work. I always so yeah, I just think
when it's
about that like,
non-consensual,
huh?
especially when it's non-consensual.
Yeah.
and you're talking at me, the thing in my mind, like, dude, shut the up.
Right. So it's
Like
like, dude,
I'm not like, wow, you're so insightful. I'm like, dude, you're just a know-it-all and you're obnoxious. And yeah, you're knowledgeable, but I don't care what you're saying at this point.
right. You lost me. You said one or two really good things, piqued my interest, and now all I can think about is how you won't stop talking. So
Yeah.
imagine if he could condense everything that he says into like a short 3 to 5 minute snippet instead of a 15-20 minute monologue. Now it's like, wow, every time I talk to that guy, he gives me like one new thing that like I
Mhm.
leave the sauna and I'm thinking about on my drive home.
Yeah. And see, that's another thing that I do love how I was trained in that because it helps me be a better conversationalist because I find myself before I'm responding typically, and sometimes I also like to just be a human being. So I'm going to rant and talk and just do
Yeah,
whatever. But when I'm really trying to be intent about being a good conversationalist, I'm asking pointed questions. Have you ever heard Socratic questioning?
I've heard Socratic. Yes.
So Socratic questioning is a technique that's been adopted by a therapist for a long time, but it's from Socrates, and I might not say the exact steps precisely. There's like four main steps, but essentially it's if you bring up a point to me, I'm going to actively listen to that point. I'm going to uh, restate your point. I'm going to kind of like summarize it in my words and say it to make sure I understand it correctly. I'm going to challenge you on, especially if there's any assumptions, I'm going to challenge you to provide more evidence for your point to back it up. And then I'm going to reclarify that. And then we're going to rinse and repeat. And that is a debate style, right? But you can ask it in questioning form with more pointed questions. So, if I'm like, hey Jesse, you were telling me about those thoughts. What do those thoughts look like for you? And you told me about the gym experience. Okay, this is an example. Okay. Well, in that experience, does it cause any distress for you? Does it really take you out of from what you're doing? May I let you answer that? And then depending on what I'm actively listening and what you say, okay, so it doesn't sound like it's distressing to you. Are there other areas of your life where it's distressing to you? No. Okay, so why would I now as a therapist give you an intervention for something that's not causing you distress? Right? So that's like we're constantly going in and out, in and out, in. Oh, there's something. Let me get more about that. And then, okay, what do you think would be helpful? What have you tried so far? What do you think that would be helpful? If that you haven't tried or that you have tried. And then
Hmm.
once I get those, then I can pair in my training and my skills and the way I do therapy to give you something that's specifically curtailed to you and we can practice it.
Yeah, no, I like that. Can I share how that kind of reminds me of like, one of the many infinite number of things that like sales and psychology and
Yeah.
what you do are relative. When you're doing a discovery call with a company and you want to understand like what is the driving factor for causing you to want to make a change to your tech stack, not that I'm going to ask it that bluntly or plainly, I'll add a lot of context, like maybe, these are typically some reasons why someone would want to drive change. Do any of those resonate or am I off base here? But when you do start to feel like you're getting something out of them, just because it's the first thing they say doesn't mean that it's actually the number one issue. So
Mhm.
at some point, once you pull that out, you have to determine for yourself, like, am I confident that this is the number one issue that we should spending our time on? Or should I stop and say, hey, are we barking up the wrong tree here? Should we stop and pause and make sure that before we spend more time on this specific issue, that this is the number one pressing issue? And I always like this guy, Chris Orlob, he shares like a forest ranger analogy. If you're a forest ranger, there's always forest fires going on, some bigger than others. You can't put them all out. So you need to pick the biggest ones and put
Mhm.
those out because those are the most threatening.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really cool about doing that technique, whether how I express it or you express it with art, which are very similar, which is very cool. And I love that because it is just like talks about the human nature of interaction, is it comes down to interaction and more importantly, connection. And with when you feel connected, when you feel heard, when you feel seen for what you're actually feeling rather than what I'm necessarily saying, right? When I'm saying, man, yeah, some of my I don't really know your world that much, so I'm not gonna have a good example. But if I'm like, yeah, I just really want to cut costs, and I was thinking about maybe doing that in my business department because like firing people, and you're like, oh, yeah, well, but once you realize I'm not just trying to cut costs, I'm trying to become more efficient. Well, those are different things, but they could be related. And if you spend all your time focusing on what I said instead of listening to what I'm saying and trying to actually hear what I mean rather than the words I use, which is complicated and that's not an intuitive thing, it's a trained practice. Well, then I'm like, oh man, he hears me for what I'm actually saying or trying to say. And I feel connected with you. And now a relationship is built. Now I'm more likely to work with you. And
Yeah.
in my world, the number one thing that helps someone accomplish meaningful change is relationship. That's why I need to listen intently because I need to trust. I need them to trust me, and I need to act as a mirror. So what they're saying, I can reflect to them and offer them a different perspective through their own eyes, help them see it a little differently. And what's really cool when you develop that relationship is there's not a bad time to do that. I've had some clients that I've been working with for a couple of weeks, and it just hasn't. There's been something that hasn't felt quite right, and I'm like, our last session, I was like, I feel like there's something. I just addressed it. I said it feels like something is not clicking here, and I want to know why. Do you have any thoughts? And what we ultimately came to is the way that I normally do therapy is what I was doing, right? It just makes sense. I do what I normally do, and I was trying to work, but there was like resistance to that, not intentionally, not that they didn't want to participate in it, but what I realized is they thought that if we did it a different way, a slightly different way, it would be more helpful. That's what they wanted. And my job is not to be like, no, 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 no. We do it my way. My job is to be like, okay, that's not how I normally do it, but I absolutely can do it that way because it's not different. We're ultimately getting to the same thing. I just have a little different approach, but I can adjust my approach to give you what you need. And literally, as soon as we had that conversation, it was like this weird tension that was there, just like, and that's what I really like is it's like if I am actively listening and I am participating, even if I don't hear it, I'm like, I can just be like, hey, it sounds like I'm not necessarily getting to where you want me to get, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Can you help me understand what you think I might be missing? Which I think could be useful in both sales or marriage or
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And so that's the way that I bring my skills generally with me because that's who I want to be. But it is like cool to then use that and be like, hey, you're talking about that, and I would love to teach like a technique that I do in therapy to help you with those thoughts. But also, if I go into that, like now we're in a therapy session and it feels a little weird, right? So it's like that's not what I want this to become. If that's the
Yeah.
point, you're like, hey, Caleb, this really is distressing. Do you have any thoughts? Of course, I would be happy to help in whatever way I can. Um, assuming it's not like literally weekly therapy, but I think it's really cool to see those inter like dynamics of relationships take place. That's why I love my job. I think that's something that I've noticed that why you really enjoy your job. Um, and it serves really foundationally. And another thing, and this is kind of my last point, is uh I noticed that both you and I kind of get frustrated around similar things in conversations when we don't feel that reciprocated to any extent, where we feel that someone is kind of going beyond this reasonable expectation of social interaction. It's like, how do you not know this? It's like,
Hmm.
well, you've had at least 4 or 5 years of dealing with that. I've had 3 years of training plus now almost 2 years of acting on it to train for that. So it is a level of conversation that most people just don't engage with.
Damn. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, without going into too much detail, Hadley and I were just talking about that last night. Like people that are just socially unaware, going on rants, like that guy at the gym, or just chiming in with irrelevant content to the conversation and like what the overall goal of a meeting might be. It's kind of like, are you just completely blissfully unaware of how irrelevant what you're saying is now? And like, that's not to sound mean. Like, there's a time and place for just casual banter and shooting the shit. And there's another type of conversation that it's like, hey, like we came into this knowing what we wanted to try to accomplish.
Yeah.
Anything that's not relevant to that, if you haven't specifically addressed, like to me, that goes a long way. if right now, just out of nowhere, like you did with that car, like I knew that that was gonna be like a short little one off. Like, dude, okay, sorry, random thought. There's a car down here that like doesn't have an engine and two wheels. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna get back on track quickly. But if you don't address that, and before I know it, like 5 minutes has gone by, and you're like still talking about the mountains and what you're seeing in your
Yeah.
view, she's gonna be like, dude, like, are we having a conversation about like psychology and how it relates to sales and vice versa and relationships and social interactions? Or are we talking about like, oh, my lamps, the color? Like, it's like, what? Um, Back to that guy that I was talking about, and I referenced his stuff a lot. I'm kind of like due for a rewatch on some of his videos, but the thing that he follows what I mentioned earlier about like making sure that you're barking up the right tree with the problem solving
Mhm.
is identifying and like realizing that like a lot of people go through day-to-day life and don't really ever feel heard. So if
Yeah.
you can give someone an ear, take in what they said, summarize it in a way that is better than they could articulate it themselves, that like immediately gives you a leg up in trust and like, man, this guy really gets it, gets me.
That's like 50% of my job. Like it literally is. It's 50% of my job is just listening to someone, reflecting what they say in different words, maybe helping them name emotions, name thoughts, and then helping them see like what that struggle looks like in their life, and then giving them skills to work through that. That's all therapy is helping someone to feel heard and understood, helping them to build awareness of that, and then develop skills to address that. Whether it's, hey, I just feel kind of zoned out in life, or I'm majorly depressed. Like whatever it is, it's very consistent usually, you know. Um, but imagine if that guy in the locker room, or I'm sorry, the sauna, if he's like, if you and him start talking, and he says something, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that, and then he just starts ranting for 15, 20 minutes, like he does, right? Or that's one response,
One
or
second. Come in.
I'm registered to vote. You have a blue or black pen?
Blue or black pen? Yeah. One
Sorry.
sec, love.
Mhm,
Adley needs a writing utensil.
no worries.
My apologies.
You're okay. See if one of these, do you need paper?
It says plain white paper, which I can just use myself.
See if one of those is good for you.
Thank you.
Sure. Happy to help. She's registering to vote. I can't turn that down. She's a Trump fan.
Oh, there we go. Another
So I'm
support.
keeping her around.
Yeah, yeah, never mind. Yeah, I'm not gonna say what I was just gonna say. But and then another option is if he's like, oh yeah, well, what about that was interesting? Like, what would you like to know more about? Like that itself is like, hey, you are also a participant in this conversation. Like that changes everything just by being like, oh yeah, I'm happy to talk more about anything specifically, or I could just rant, you know. Um,
Yeah. I think there's also the idea that chimes in for me, especially as you start to like see the same people and have interactions with the same people. Not to make it sound like so conceited, self conceited, if that's the right way to use this word. When there's a degree of predictability, that
yeah,
adds so much for me. It's like when I know he's in the sauna, I know what the conversation's going to be, how long he's going to talk, the tone that he's going to use, and that is like hard to get over. You know what
yeah.
I'm talking about?
Dude, I do. We've been attending this new church that I really like the um sermons. The pastor does an expositional sermon, which really just means like he's diving into the text and letting the text speak for itself and helping explain that, which is cool because a lot of pastors just are like, oh, I went on a hike and here's the scripture from thing, and also I was nice to people. And it's like, what did you just say to me? Like that was nothing.
Yeah.
So I love this sermon, the sermon style that he does. But there's this guy that gets on stage. He's another like pastor, the worship pastor, and he just talks. And every Sunday, I'm like, I do not like this man. I've not talked to him one on one yet, but just the way he talks, the way he like does that, like, every time before he says something that's going to be the most profound thing ever, he always jumps ahead and talks a little bit about what the actual pastor is going to talk about. It's like, bro, you're talking about for 30 minutes. You are here to lead worship. Just start singing. Just shut up and start singing. And then he talks for 20 minutes. And then guess what? The first song, guess whose voice I'm hearing every single time? His, for that song and at least two others. And I'm like, by the time I get to the sermon, I'm just like, oh, it's
Right.
balance. So that itself is like, I'm not sure if I want to save this church because I really don't like that. But I really like this one. And so Brie and I are working together on it. But that's to say, yes, I get it. When you get that predictable, especially if it's something that already annoys you a little bit. If you experience it once and it already annoys you, they experience it twice and it happens the same way, it's hard to not let that like resentment build and just
Yeah.
grow.
And it's like you see him step on stage and you're like, I know what's coming next.
Yes, I know for the next 20 to 25 minutes of my life, I am not going to be enjoying it like in any way.
Yeah. And I imagine you're not alone on this.
Yeah, I actually met with the pastor this week and kind of for the first time, like I talked to him after service a little bit, but I asked him for a coffee and I kind of gently brought up, I'm like, hey, what's happening in service? It feels very disconnected. It's like this guy talks for like 30 minutes, gives his own little sermon, and then you come in and he's like, well, we definitely don't want it to be fragmented. So I don't know. I'm hoping with like a new, if I do build relationships there with like a new eye, they're willing to like hear me. But now that attacks it, whether I mean it to or not, it indirectly attacks someone who is in that church and is prominent in that church, and no one gives up their little bit of power easily. And he clearly is someone who likes that. So
Right.
I can't imagine I'm going to like change this church, nor is that my intention. So it's just something that Brie and I are gonna have to endure and see if it's like worth it at the end of the day over the next month or whatever.
Yeah. Like where does it outweigh?
Yeah,
Can you still hear me fine from back here?
yeah.
Like does that outweigh the the likeness of the rest of the church that you can endure this
Yeah.
20 minutes? Like which one is more important? Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And like I'm going to they have a men's um like meeting this Saturday for a book that they're reading together. And so I'm gonna go experience that because I'll get to actually get to know that guy a little bit and all I've seen right now is like Sunday church. So I need to see if the church as a whole, how it interacts is worth it. That's why I sat down with the pastor because we've been there like 3 or 4 times now. So I'm like, all right, now's a good time to really see, is this somewhere I want to like try to create a home or not? And so I'm really like testing that, especially after our church history. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
so it's I'm really a part of me always wants to like in that situation just be like, I'm not dealing with that and run away. But then I'm like, yeah, but there's always going to be a reason to leave. Like there always is. And so I need to at least give it a chance. And I'm proud of myself and Bria both being willing to give it a chance, even when it's uncomfortable in that way. And just be like, look, it's not permanent. It doesn't have to be. Just I'll go to the men's thing, go from there.
That's it, man.
Yeah. But in moments like that with the sauna, it's a little different because it's like, I mean, what do you leave the sauna every time? Do you just endure it for 20 minutes? Do you wait him out? You know?
Sometimes he says something new that I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Nothing that I'm like taking home and thinking about. And that's like, I guess, kind of back to something we were talking about earlier with like, how much content you consume.
Yeah.
If you're already listening to a lot of the same content that people are then in the sauna regurgitating, it's kind of like, all right, dude, I already know this. Like, you're not telling me nothing new here, Buckaroo.
Like just telling you what Joe Rogan said last week, but now it's their words.
Yeah, it's so funny that that became such a meme because I felt myself doing that years ago, being like that guy that always references something that I heard in a podcast, and I thought like, oh man, no, like I loved hearing this. Like I'm sure other people would love hearing this too. And then like when it caught on like it is now, and like everyone listens to some kind of podcast, and like there's only so many ideas to be shared.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
like
yeah, they.
if you're listening to like a comedy type podcast, like sure, there's probably something always new and funny to share, or like a new TikTok video to watch. But if you're just talking about Joe Rogan has a very minimal spectrum of things that he like goes on tangents about, like
I
UFOs, people with
I can expect.
schizophrenia.
Yeah. He's a case
Case,
in point of someone why I sometimes don't listen, because I'm like, I know what he's going to talk about, and I don't feel like hearing
yeah.
it for the 10th time.
There's a random stat that they want to look up, and he's like, "Whoa, while Jamie's looking it up, let's guess."
Yeah,
It's like, dude, it's like how many Americans are obese? It's like what percentage do you think that is?
yeah,
It's like, dude, even if we guess it, it's a guess. There's luck.
yeah.
But yeah, just difference in some people love that.
Yeah. Good consistency. I think you and I are both someone who likes more, like, I generally want to feel comfortable, but also I like novelty in my life. I don't
Yeah.
love consistency in that way.
Yeah. And I want factual information. I want applicable information, actionable tips, not fluff and extra stuff. I don't want to hear a story and know that as you're telling it, I'm like, dude, I know that that's not how it went down, either because I was there and I'm overhearing a friend tell a story, or because I'm just like, dude, I'm totally calling BS here.
That kind of reminds me of I've been getting, first off, I think YouTube increased its ads like exponentially.
Really.
Like I get way more YouTube ads right now, which is so annoying. And I've talked to a couple other people who are saying the same thing.
Do you pay for cable or anything right now?
No.
Dude, I could genuinely say that the $15 a month that I pay for YouTube Premium is like undoubtedly one of my best monthly bills.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that fundamentally, but I don't want to give more money to YouTube because it's it's literal extortion, and I just can't take part in that for like principle. I,
Extortion?
yeah, they're like, hey, it's like if I keep punching you in the face every now and then, I'm like, Jesse, if you pay me $15 a month, I'll stop punching you in the face. And I'm just like, not, I don't support that type of thing. So it's like, dude, it sucks, but I can endure it.
That's fair.
I mean,
I look at
I
it,
get it that that's not the only way,
yeah.
it's probably not the most helpful way to think about it, but
No, like I look at it differently. Like, you know,
your time
it's
is
a platform that they allow people to use for free.
yeah.
Either take it as it is and enjoy it and don't complain, or if you want out, here's an option.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I genuinely wouldn't complain past the like. I feel like there've been more, and it's a little annoying, but like I'm still using YouTube, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, totally.
Um, but the thing I was gonna bring up is I keep getting these ads, and there's this like consistent. It just drives me crazy. There's this consistent format to the ads where it's like, oh, you thought that that's what you were supposed to be doing? No, that's not it at all. Stay tuned, and I'll tell you what's to do different. It's like either say the thing or shut up. Like this format of like, oh, you think you're supposed to eat bananas and eggs for your metabolism? No. Or this is what they tell healthy people to do to work out, but that's not right. Or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
all this format of like trying to hook you in. It's such an artificial hook. And
I would
like
say it's yeah,
people
it's like
fall
a
for this.
standard marketing hook, like
Yeah.
something that grabs your attention just enough that before you know it, you're 3 minutes in and you're like, "What the? I'm watching a new video within a video that I was watching that I
Yeah.
intentionally clicked on."
Well, and I've never done. I'm like just eye on the little skip, right? I'm just
Right?
waiting for the 3 or 4 seconds, or I put my phone down until I'm back. But I'm like wondering, do people get caught into this because they
Oh
click
yeah,
a guy that looks weird, like he's old and in shape and muscular and yells like, yeah, I
yeah.
guess.
No, it's all like tactic marketing in the same way that all the political ads that are going on right now. Like all of them are using that same tactic. Like here's an issue that you weren't aware of. Now you are. Here's the solution. Me.
Yeah. Well, I wish. I wonder if I looked up like political ads of mid 1900s and maybe late 1900s, if they would look more about like, hey, this is what I believe and this is why I want to do it. Versus now it's like, this is what he believes and this is why he's the demon, or this is why what she believes and this is why she's a communist. It's like I from political ads and generally debates, I know less about those individuals and more about why they think that other person's evil. But you get what I'm trying to say here? Like very
Yeah.
rarely do I see whomever it is say something about like, hey, truly, this is my belief. This is what
Yeah, like
JD Vance did that pretty well in his debate. But
yeah, oh, he was awesome. He was
yeah,
stellar. Like the ad I keep seeing for Kamala is like she wants to allow immigrants to have a sex change paid for by us. And it's like, okay, I don't like that, but that doesn't give me any insight as to what you're going to do differently. Like, where do you stand on the subject?
Exactly.
How high on your priority list is stopping that? Is that like a serious concern that I should be aware of? Like, how many taxpayer dollars have gone towards sex
Yeah.
changes for immigrants? Like, is that a
Yeah.
number I
Where's the
should be
information
concerned
on this?
about?
Why is it just a scare? In fine print, it says, I will also do that, but she's doing it. And I want to let you know.
She's going to do it more than I will.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just weird, man. It's like what a weird, like that says so much about our cultural focus right now, where it's so much less about like introspective growth and positive like contemplation of where we can go forward, and more about just like beating into you fear and why that person's evil. And it's just like, look, I think Trump is a much better candidate for policy reasons, but the reasons I believe in him are not because of his ads or how he speaks about that. It's
Yeah,
because
no.
I've seen his work in action. I believe in his policies, and I'll vote for that alone. Also, I have, not that I trust either one, like I would give my life to either one with trust, but I do. What I see from Trump, I believe that he does support America, like actually wants America to thrive. I really do believe that. I've
Yeah.
seen that from his experience. But if I were just going off of those ads, they just, like either side just leaves me very disheartened for the state of our country more than anything else.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's like that's like one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is like just because a company is advertising this or political ads are saying this or that, like that is a representation of the people that put that ad together, not necessarily what the masses feel or what the masses care about.
Yeah.
It's just so few people control what content is shown to us. So like it's not like we are, it's not like that's a reflection of the concerns of the people.
Yeah. Okay, I really have to pee, so would you rather end this or just take a pause?
Um, no, let's wrap it up, but let's set up a new time right now. I have my calendar pulled up.
Okay.
I'm cool to do like if you want to like early next week because I feel like we were rolling good today and like it was just like completely just all off the cuff. It's not like either of us even brought anything to the table. Like I'm looking at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let me know what day looks good.
Monday I have 11 a.m., which would be 1 p.m. your time. Would that work?
Monday,
Yeah.
which would be
Or
what
1 p.m. Eastern.
would be my time that you want to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do one and I'll block off until excuse me. I'll block off until like 2:30 just in case.
Okay. All right.
I have to pee too, so this is kind of convenient.
Yeah, I'm literally like my legs are dancing. So,
All right,
all right,
brother. Good chat as always. We still need to work on a guest, but we'll get there.
buddy. We'll get there.
All right, buddy. See ya.
All right, man. All right, bye.
Bye bye.